Ooh, get that right.
Going back to the Tower of Operation.
These men have one of the most stressful jobs in the world. They're air traffic controllers.
I don't even want to think about the odds of sooner or later any airplanes hitting. I don't think anyone wants to. That's just not a thought I want to think about for sure.
They're responsible for the lives of the 250,000 people who fly in and out of the world's busiest airspace every day, New York.
I say it has a good half dozen moments of absolute sheer terror a year, where you wish you did something else for a living.
You're watching these planes come together, and it will scare a couple of years right off your life when they get really close.
I don't think you could do this job successfully if you sat and thought, well, here's 300 people and here's 250 people. I can't let these 550 people get near each other. You just got to say, I can't let that blip get near that blip.
A lot of people refer to air traffic control as kind of an enhanced video game, you know. And I played a lot of video games, and you know how you play these video games, usually you get 3 men or 3 lives, you know, you make a mistake, the game goes on. Air traffic control is a great video game, but you really only have 1 life.
Over the last 15 years, the number of planes in the air has doubled. There's acute congestion around many of the world's airports. In New York, it's pushing the controller's skills to the limit. Over the last year, there's been on average a near miss every month, with planes passing within 500 feet of each other. A mid-air collision over a big city is every controller's nightmare.
The terrible aftermath of the worst air disaster in history. In a Brooklyn street lies the shattered wreckage of a jet transport which collided with another airliner in murky New York skies.
In 1960, 2 planes collided in the fog over New York, killing 128 passengers and 6 people on the streets below.
Fiery death from the skies without warning. Horror added to horror, shockingly emphasizing to the nation the terrible consequences of the aerial traffic jam in America's skies.
40 years later, there are nearly 30 times as many planes. Air traffic controllers are finding it increasingly difficult to operate the system safely.
Check clear behind the model.
Former Navy pilot Jim Courtney has worked in the control tower at LaGuardia Airport for 2 years.
Physics 561, runway 13 at intersection Romeo.
LaGuardia is one of 3 major airports that serve New York City. It's popular because it's so close to Manhattan.
The proximity of the 3 airports is very close. You have Newark just across the water that way, and you can see airplanes going in there sometimes when they're on 2-2. The weather's a little hazy right now. Medics 82 LaGuardia Tower, thank you. South of us we have Kennedy, and they're close enough that you can see the traffic landing at Kennedy. You can see their airplanes right there directly out the window. All just a matter of a couple miles apart, 5 miles that way, 5 miles that way. And then we're kind of in the middle of that. Shuttle 6101, left turn, Bravo, ground clearance, see you later.
New York's airspace is complex. The 3 airports, LaGuardia, Newark and Kennedy, are in a triangle within 15 miles of each other. Planes flying into LaGuardia approach along the east of Manhattan. Planes leaving head north. This keeps them away from Newark Airport, over to the west of the city. Its flight corridor is just 5 miles away from LaGuardia. 15 miles to the southeast is Kennedy Airport. The arrivals come in over the coast, and the departures turn away from Newark and LaGuardia. Some planes heading west have to turn and fly over the top of LaGuardia. When the weather changes, the airports switch to different runways and corridors. Sometimes planes going to Kennedy have to approach over New York City. It means that LaGuardia and Newark have to change their flight paths. There are several configurations, and whatever one airport does affects the other two. The airspace is divided into sectors, with teams of air traffic controllers at each airport, and another team controlling the surrounding airspace. Up to 7,500 planes come in and out every day.
Check.
At LaGuardia, Jim Courtney is talking to pilots, clearing every takeoff and landing.
20014. Colonel 1742 left soft ground clearing. You take care now.
Okay, thanks. Have a great one.
You too. Here Shuttle 6490, your traffic's on the 2.5 mile final. The wind's 20014. Runway 22. You just kind of, your eyes are obviously, and what you hear, your eyes and ears is pretty much everything. You're listening, call signs, sound of pilot's voice, you can always tell when something's wrong. US Air 1480 LaGuardia, thanks. You're following the Falcon jet on a 3 mile final ahead. Check.
LaGuardia has two runways that cross each other. It's a configuration that was designed years ago for a much smaller volume of traffic. The runway setup means that planes cross each other's path when they land and take off. This prop plane must be past the runway intersection before the US Airways plane starts its takeoff roll. As the jet heads for the intersection, another plane is coming in to land, less than 60 seconds away.
American 626, 2 left, join Bravo when you can, ground clearing. You take care now.
Ground 1 can, American 626.
There are strict rules to prevent planes flying too close to each other. They're called separation standards.
Tower controllers will use something called anticipated separation, which means that
Control 13, your show for tour.
Hotel Papa Mike, the right turn off when you can, ground clear, and we'll see you later. Now take care.
Thanks.
For instance, the airplane might be touching down right before the intersection there, and I'm already clearing the next guy for takeoff. That's because I'm anticipating that by the time that airplane starts moving, he will be through the intersection. So it's a way of saving time. Call it shooting the gap. And basically not something like that, because that wasn't close. But when the airplane just gets through that intersection as one's landing, we call that shooting the gap.
At peak time, Jim has to shoot the gap 80 times an hour, juggling the planes at 45-second intervals.
It's just a very agonizing situation to watch two airplanes, one departing, one land, get that close. And you just kind of gritting your teeth, knowing it's going to work, but it's still, they're so close that it provides a lot of anxious moments for everybody.
9124, still clear to land 22. Thank you, sir.
Each plane will pass through the hands of 8 different controllers in its progress through the airport.
And this is the cab coordinator. He's responsible for the overall operation, just kind of make sure that everything works smoothly. He's kind of like the fail-safe.
In what's considered to be a high-tech job, some of the methods and equipment haven't changed for years.
6.05 now, 090 and 1500, take care.
Details for every flight are logged on a paper strip.
This is an arrival strip. It gives you the call sign, the type of airplane, in this case, MD-80, that's American 724. So we get all information from these strips right here. And we have this very modern time stamping equipment, but I have to tell you, it's Y2K compliant, so that's good. It won't be affected at all by the Y2K computer bug on January 1st. Delta 1842.
The controllers are involved in a long-running battle with their employers, the Federal Aviation Administration, to persuade them to replace the antiquated equipment with the latest air traffic control technology.
629, good day.
Commerce 638, 2 left when you can, join Bravo, ground clearance along. I think Fred Flintstone was probably the first guy who worked here at LaGuardia, and I think most of the stuff that he used is probably still with us today. The radar we have now will have a blind spot where an airplane is. You look out the window and you go, there's the airplane. There's no building in the way, but he's not being picked up by the radar. Then on the other hand, that same radar who can't see the airplane in the air, you look over to the other side of the airport, basically along where the bridges are. And you see all these primary radar targets on the radar, and you're thinking, is there a helicopter out there that we're missing? And what it is tractor trailers that are traveling across that bridge. The radar's picking them up, but it's not seeing the airplanes. Canadian 527, runway 13, clear for takeoff. The pressure's always on to increase the number of airplanes that we can work an hour. The push is on because it means dollars for the airlines and passengers getting where they want to go. The push is always on to increase the volume. You take that volume, always increasing, you add in the equipment, and you hope that the safety measures that are in place prevent all the accidents, but mistakes are made. And usually at LaGuardia, when things go wrong, they end up on the news.
Trouble in the tower at LaGuardia Airport. An error almost causes a terrible mid-air collision. A U.S. Airways plane cleared to land, just as an Air Canada flight is cleared to take off across its path. A passenger on U.S. Airways.
We just kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And finally, I think I just let out a yell, and a moment later, not because of the yell, but I think the pilots just pulled up and around.
The controller had ordered the incoming, blue plane to climb rather than land when he realized that the outgoing plane was late taking off. They only just missed.
Depending on the reports, the difference between US Air's tail and the bottom of Air Canada's fuselage, depending on which witness was interviewed and which story, anywhere from between 20 and 100 feet, I believe, are the figures. And I didn't personally see that one, but I did speak to the controller who was involved with that. And even though he followed all the rules, had the appropriate separation standards, it was still ugly. And it was a very scary moment, I can tell you that. We've never had a mid-air with two airplanes hitting at the intersection, and I pray to God that we never do.
Clouds of black smoke from the downed and burning jetliner billowed thousands of feet into the air.
In America's open skies, private plane owners have the right to fly almost anywhere. Light aircraft have brought down passenger jets.
Bodies and plane parts were scattered over several...
In this accident over California, a Cessna crashed into a Boeing 727, killing everyone in both planes, and 7 people on the ground.
PSA jetliner went down after colliding in midair with a Cessna 172. On board the smaller plane, a student pilot and an instructor. Both men died.
More than 2,000 helicopters and light aircraft fly through New York's airspace every day. It's 6 p.m., rush hour at LaGuardia.
8 Gulf Sierra, 7 Gulf Sierra.
Phil Fabricatori is controlling helicopters and light aircraft in LaGuardia's airspace.
Foley Motel traffic 1 mile south of the GW Bridge on the Harlem River at 1,400 feet, orbiting helicopter. 19 Golf, you leaving Bravo airspace, squawk VFR, ready to search, terminated, freeze change approved. Traffic 2 o'clock, 3 miles westbound, 1,400 feet, types unknown.
You know where the big planes are going to be, because there it's all, you know, proceduralized. The pilots know what they're supposed to be doing. You know what the pilots are supposed to be doing, so you know where they're going to be. So it's the little guys that you have to watch out for. And during the summertime, with the float planes coming in and out of Manhattan now for people going out to the Hamptons, you have the business helicopters flying in and out of Westchester and Teterboro into the city. You have the sightseeing helicopters going around the city. And then you have everybody who wants to take a trip down the Hudson River to go see the Statue of Liberty, and it's pretty much a free-for-all.
And you can see a lot of the little helicopters run up and down the city. You can see they're all like little gnats running around in the city there. US Air 226, turn left to join Bravo, ground clear, and you take care now.
Bravo, US Air 226.
How did that guy get there?
Jim has spotted a rogue aircraft marked VI-01 on his radar screen.
He's not out. Right now he's worried about a VFR target at 1,500 feet out there. Some of the airplanes out the edge of our airspace can fly out there without talking to any air traffic controllers, and right now we have one right on the edge, and he's in a bad place right now.
A light aircraft has strayed dangerously into the flight path of planes coming into land.
4-mile final, traffic off your right side, 1,600 southbound, type unknown.
Jim asks an incoming pilot if he can identify the mystery plane.
And if you do get a visual on him off the right side, let me know what type he is.
That's it. Let you know.
Okay, 3759, left at Echo, ground clearing. So right now, all I have out there is basically, I see his altitude. I don't know what he is. I can pick up the binoculars and see if I can see that far, but I probably can't because it's kind of hazy. So, can't see him out there. So I'm asking the airplane that was closest to him, basically, do you know what he is? What type of airplane? Maybe we can figure out if it's a helicopter or whatever.
They say it's at 1,500 feet that the guy on the harp tag reported him. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically it's like a violator to our airspace right now, and he's right in the middle of our file. It's no good. This is bad. So we'll deal with it, right? In the tower, when something goes wrong, you have like a split second to analyze and react, or something very bad is going to happen. Commerce 638 LaGuardia, thanks for following Saab on a 4-mile final. You didn't happen to see what type of aircraft that was, the violator that was on the base, did you?
I couldn't. It was a small plane, like a Cherokee or something.
Okay, thanks a lot. He says he thinks it's a Cherokee.
This guy's lost.
The Cherokee's kind of circling in that area, just north of the field. Just kind of keep an eye on him, make sure that no one's going to hit him. US Air 1843 LaGuardia Tower, thanks. Your number 3 following regionals at a 4-mile final.
1843.
Physics 513, runway 22, you clear to land.
For the moment, Jim continues to let planes land and take off.
Taxi into position hold.
Position hold 13 down 629.
Commerce 638, traffic's mile final, runway 22.
For the next few minutes, they'll have to keep the jets out of the way of the violator.
Yeah, we're watching them big time. So this is kind of like right now, you're kind of doing both things. Looking out the window, looking on the radar to kind of watch what that violator's doing, because I can't see him visually. The only thing I can do is watch what he's doing on the radar.
The violator, VI-01, creeps further into their airspace. They can't speak to him because they don't know what radio frequency he's on.
8 Bravo Quebec, traffic 12 o'clock, 2.5 miles opposite direction.
Phil Fabricatori warns a helicopter, call sign Bravo Quebec, to keep clear.
8 Bravo Quebec, use caution and verify that's a Cherokee or a Cessna.
His screen flashes up CA, conflict alert. The violator is on a collision course with Bravo Quebec.
It looks like maybe our little violator there has figured out what his problem was, because it appears now he's going northbound, but we'll see.
The violator changes course and checks in with the tower.
It's Shadow 9.
You're kidding.
No.
Shadow 9 is a traffic spotter from a local news station.
Is it Shadow? No, that's the guy who's ultimately familiar with the, the area. Knows he's one of the traffic spotter guys. Knows the area in and out. He knew exactly where he was, so he shouldn't have been there.
Shadow 9, right now you're at the edge of my airspace at 1,400 feet. Earlier, before, you were at 1,500 feet over the outer marker for runway 22, or landing runway 22. That's inside my airspace. Shadow 9, roger. Understand you're going to stay north of Van Cortlandt Park now?
4683 LaGuardia, runway 13, position hold.
Shadow 9, squawk for your fire radar services terminated. Frequency change is approved. Have a good day.
Man, now you sounded kind of all pumped up over here.
Yeah. No, I'm not inside your airspace. Yeah, you are. Crazy.
US Air's 1157 LaGuardia, thanks, found traffic on a 2-mile flight.
The threat of an accident hangs over the controllers every day.
People deal with their stress of their job in different ways, but I tell you what, anyone in a tower will never forget there's people on airplanes, because they see what happens when airplanes crash off the end of the runway. They'll never forget. That's the big stress. There's plenty of guys just can't wait to move on, to do something else, retire. Stress affects people differently. Some guys thrive on it. Other guys, after 10, 15 years of it, they might have thrived on it once before, but not anymore. And I think I think you finally get to a point in your life where you're full of that kind of stress and you get out.
With many opting for early retirement and not enough people being trained to replace them, there are fears that an already strained service may soon be pushed to breaking point.
Alitalia 767, either to Milan or to Rome.
John F. Kennedy is New York's largest airport. It's only 15 miles away from LaGuardia and Newark and handles a high proportion of international flights.
What? The big one.
Air traffic controller Dave Schoen seems to thrive on the pressures of the job.
But it's interesting to meet people and hear, you're an air traffic controller. Ooh, that's got to be stressful. And you look at them and if you're at a party or something, you take your soda and you go, nah, not stressful, Where we are right now, we're in the northwest corner of the field along runway 31 left, which starts about 2.5 miles that way and ends way down here towards New York City. What you're looking at here, a jet taking off runway 31 left. You'll notice immediately as soon as he departs, he's got to make a left turn. That's to get away from Newark and LaGuardia traffic. On a day like today, they're in the clouds as soon as 300 feet. That's the last they're going to see land for a long time. The control tower's out there in the middle, underneath the fog. Up there, you're insulated from a lot of the noise and the reality of it. When they fly by, you hear the raw power of them is amazing. That's a Lufthansa 747 going to Germany. It's kind of wild, isn't it? Yeah, you barely see them for a few seconds. That you're feeling right there, that's wake turbulence. Okay, that wind didn't just kick up. That's his wingtip vortices coming across and away. So that almost made my hat fly off, but that's exactly what it feels like. It's very intense, and because the ground is dispersing it, it doesn't knock you over. You're in an airplane behind that. It's not the place you want to be. Gotta stay away from it.
Wake turbulence is the biggest factor determining how closely the planes can follow each other.
The larger the airplane and the slower the airplane, the worse the wake is going to be. A 747 can generate vortices that last up to 3 to 4 minutes and are mini tornadoes coming off the wingtips. You can actually see it today. If you watch the wingtips of these, you'll actually see it. The separation minimum between two DC-9s on final approach is 2.5 miles. The closest I could ever be to that aircraft you just saw, a 767, is 4 miles, almost double. So you can fit, let's say, 4 or 5 DC-9s on the same approach. You could only fit 3 767s. And you need that extra separation for wake turbulence, which is a very serious issue. As the planes get larger and larger, that becomes more of a problem as well. We have mostly heavy jets here, slows down the operation quite a bit.
As the skies get more crowded, airports are getting overloaded. At Newark Airport, on the other side of New York City, the safety gap between planes is being pushed to the limit. Newark is New York's busiest airport. 1,500 planes use it each day. It's 8 a.m. Controller Glenn Duffy is facing the daily headache of the early morning departure push.
Allegheny 3963, I can read you clearly. Can you copy me?
Over the next 2 hours, Glenn will have to control 80 planes coming into land. And for every 2 waiting to land, there are 3 wanting to take off. Every morning it's the same, gridlock. Planes waiting for up to 45 minutes for their turn to take off. Delays are so regular that the airlines write them into their timetables.
Air Jamaica 018 Heavy Newark Tower, caution wait turbulence in trail with a heavy DC-10, runway 4 left, taxi into position and hold.
How often have you got a takeoff and a landing?
Every minute. Just about every minute there's a takeoff and a landing. Midway 861, taxi your course, runway 4 left, then contact ground on point 8.
Cross 4 left and then point 8, 861.
Newark handles a mixture of large jets and small commuter planes, so calculating the different safe takeoff intervals requires constant mental agility.
Commuter 4660, contact New York departure, good day. Because I've got to consider types. And this aircraft is just a twin turboprop. He's a Beech 1900, and he's not as fast as this jet that's behind him. So I've got to let this aircraft fly a good mile or 2 before I can let this aircraft go, so that I'm going to guarantee to have 3 miles in between the 2 airplanes. Generally, I can roll one. If I have similar types, I can roll 1 type. Commuter 4660, contact New York departure, good day. I can launch 1 jet and then 1 jet, another right behind him, and I'll get the 3 miles instantly.
Presumably you have to know everything about every plane.
You have to, yeah, you have to take care of aircraft performance and capabilities. You have to understand. Kind of depends on how many people they have on board, how much fuel they put on board, how much cargo. Delta 847, contact New York departure, good day.
847, good day, sir.
Continental 1451, wind 050 at 18, runway 4 left, cleared for takeoff. I mean, you start to even consider, like, this is a jet, but he's a 727. The 727 is a very old jet, and they don't climb very well. And especially in the summertime when it's very hot and humid, they climb very slow, and they almost struggle to get in the air. And that's another thing, it's just a slow jet. I can't launch a very fast jet behind him because he's going to catch me. And it's very, very condensed airspace. There's a lot of traffic that's going overhead this field out to the east and the west. Yes, got that.
10 might have to move up so the guy can get the picture. Looks like 10's hanging.
Got it. Air Jamaica 018 Heavy, wind 050 at 17. Go ahead and monitor tower. It looks like you'll be next to go. You have a good day.
Air Jamaica 018 Heavy.
Newark Airport is renowned as the delay capital of the United States.
There's probably about 25 aircraft just sitting at the runway, and we are technically in departure delays right now. And it's just a lot of planes at once. Usually it's just multi-taxis, which is causing the delay. Jetlink 4224, hold short of runway 4 left and remain this frequency.
4 left to 4224.
Glenn is officially judged on his safety record, but he also feels the constant pressure to minimize delays.
Cross the left, point 8, good day.
ProHawk 323, you can contact New York departure. Good day to you.
323, good day.
There's now a queue of planes that have just landed. They have to cross the runway being used for takeoffs to get to the terminal.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this regional jet off runway 4 left. As soon as that aircraft is clear of this intersection, I will move this arrival aircraft across the inboard runway and get him on the way to the gate. As you can see, the aircraft is just starting to rotate now. You can see the lights lifting up off the ground. Continental 1979, taxi across runway 4 left, then contact ground on point 8.
Cross 4 left and ground point 8, Continental 1979. Super takeoff, Continental 655.
Aruba 720, wind 060 at 15, runway 4 left, clear for takeoff.
Super takeoff, 4 left,
And you just keep doing the same thing. Jetlink 3578, hold short of runway 4 left and remain this frequency.
13, hold short of 4 left, 3578.
Continental 143, Newark Tower, runway 4 left, taxi into position and hold. I'm constantly looking up at the radar, making sure that I've got separation there. I'm looking at my runways to make sure I've got separation on the ground. And I'm also looking out in the sky to make sure that I've got visual separation with any airplanes that might be on my final, any airplanes that might be transferring through my airspace. So that's where the swivel head kind of came about, because you're constantly looking to the left, looking to the right, looking up, looking down, coordinating, and there's just a lot going on. Continental 302, exit hold short of runway 4 left. Say I'm working. It's a busy session, and I've got 10 people on final. My radar all of a sudden goes blank. Zero, nothing on it. And at that point, when that radar goes out in a second, you're scrambling. Your brain's thinking, you're like, what am I going to do to separate these airplanes? And just about every time it does work out. There's equipment in the airplanes that is cutting-edge equipment, whereas Newark Airport, we're getting a ground radar now that was built years ago. I am using equipment now that was probably built prior to me being born. American 515, contact New York departure, good day.
And which taxiway to hold short of 4 left for 516?
In the past 5 years, the number of planes using Newark has gone up by 50%, but the number of controllers has stayed the same.
It's just one airplane after another. Every single minute you're departing airplanes, and every single minute you're landing airplanes. There is no set number of how many flights can leave or depart this airport every day. It's unlimited, however many of the airlines want to put in. And that's one of the growing pains we're having here at Newark. Some of the airlines and some of the major users seem to be putting more airplanes in this airport than this airport can accommodate.
Glenn is supposed to stay on position for 2 hours, but the intensity often forces him to take a break after just one.
There are days when I walk out of here and I'm dizzy. I know guys that specifically come down here and they rest after their shift. Instead of just being able to leave and get in your car and go home, they'll come down here, they'll have a cigarette, they'll go to a local establishment and, you know, have a cocktail or whatever it is, just to calm themselves down before they get in the car and start and head home.
It's 8 p.m. at Kennedy Airport. Dave Schoen is starting the night shift. This is peak time for all the international departures.
Entanglement, there you go.
As the airport is close to the sea, it's frequently covered in a blanket of fog.
Eesh. Look, it's getting icky out there.
Yeah.
We can't see outside at all. So everything's done in memory and on the ground radar.
Dave uses ASDI, the same ground radar that they've got at Newark. It shows anything that moves on the tarmac, but it can't identify aircraft type and can only be used as a guide to keep the planes apart. Kennedy is a maze of interweaving taxiways. Just guiding the planes through the fog towards the runway is potentially dangerous.
Learjet 8 Juliet Hotel, say your position.
8 Juliet Hotel is coming up on November now.
8 Juliet Hotel, roger. Straight ahead, Quebec to the GAT. Thank you.
8 Juliet Hotel, straight ahead from Quebec to the GAT, and we're clear in November.
Air France 007, Heavy Canada ground, good evening. It'll be runway 22 right, taxi right Alpha, hold short of taxiway Victor.
Okay, right on Alpha.
Yeah, in weather like this, you have to do double the transmissions you normally do because you have to get position verifications from everyone, which normally you take for granted by seeing. The Learjets pass Swissair, you can't tell, so you have to ask Swissair. I tell you, double the transmissions. Evergreen 102 Heavy Canada Ground, good evening, sir. Taxi Alpha and Quebec, and report passing the general aviation terminal if you would.
It's not just the fog that slows things down.
Varigate 65 Heavy Canada.
Dave has to deal with foreign airlines and pilots unfamiliar with the airport.
Varigate 65 Heavy, runway 22 right, taxi left Bravo, hold short of Victor, Tower Air will hold for you from the left.
Okay, understood. Continue to the Bravo, then left, and hold short of Victor.
Okay, sir, I don't have you in sight. Did you make a turn onto Alpha taxiway yet?
No, we are on Bravo.
Oh boy. See, now, guy's going the wrong way on the taxiway and we can't see him.
There's another private jet that's not in immediate danger, but Dave needs to turn it around fast.
There's a little trick we do all the time. You take a very familiar Kennedy-based airline and you ask them to help you out. Eagle Flight 924, Canada Ground.
Ground Eagle Flight 924 with you.
Eagle Flight 924, do you see a G4 off your right side?
Dave wants the lost private jet to follow the American Eagle.
Negative.
Eagle Flight 924, taxi right Alpha, hold short of Victor, advise that G4 in sight. When you have a foreign general aviation aircraft, it's usually head of state or something like that that's coming in, and they've only been here once, and it can be very tricky. You get these guys to help you out.
4 right Alpha, hold short Victor, and advise the G4 in sight.
After an hour, Dave has only managed to move about half of the scheduled planes.
A moving plane is a money-generating plane, and a sitting plane is just wasting it. And we hear that second-hand, third-hand, never directly, and it's in your thoughts. You try to do the best thing. You try to be the most efficient controller that you can be. But again, you work on safety first. Safety is your priority, because if that goes out the window, nothing else matters.
After takeoff, as soon as the wheels are up, another team of air traffic controllers takes over. They work in the New York TRACON, or Terminal Radar Approach Control.
Concord Breeze. Speedbird 1.
In this windowless room, the controllers work under the most stressful conditions.
Probably still see him on the radar.
Each person handles up to 15 planes at once. They never see them. All they have is the blips on their radar screen and radio talkback.
Maintain 2,200, flighting 150.
60 controllers each manage a different sector of New York airspace. As a plane flies through, it's handed from controller to controller.
Speedbird 179 Heavy, reduce speed of 180.
Dean Iacopelli is controlling arrivals into Kennedy. He's funneling planes from different directions into one orderly queue before handing them over to the tower controllers for landing.
Air Mexico 416, flight heading 070, intercept 4 right localizer. United 862 Heavy, turn right heading 070, intercept 4 right localizer.
Dean's radar screen is a two-dimensional image of his three-dimensional airspace. Each plane appears as a radar blip, with aircraft type, speed, altitude, and destination attached.
Remaining 6 Heavy, turn further left heading 130.
They're not all at the same height or flying in the same direction.
876, speed 180.
When Dean looks at his radar, this is the three-dimensional picture he has to imagine as he tries to keep the planes safely apart.
Eagle Flight 876, descend and maintain 2,000.
Okay, 76.
Air Mexico 416 is 12 miles from Ebby, maintain 2,000 till established localizer, cleared dollars runway 4 right approach, maintain speed 190 till advised.
Yeah, so Jeanette, 190 till advised, Air Mexico 416.
United 862 Heavy is 15 miles from Ebby, maintain 3,000 till established localizer, cleared dollars runway 4 right approach, maintain speed 190 knots till advised. They're expecting me to say heading altimeter runway, and I'm expecting them to read back heading altimeter runway. The job requires that I hear their read back to confirm the instruction, but it's just, you know, you sit there kind of snapping your fingers, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. You sit here trying to hurry the pilot along in his read back so that I can get on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Because if you're thinking about the instruction you're giving now, then you're behind. You got to think about the instruction you have to give
third or fourth after the one you're giving now.
Meter 4539, heading 180, you're 7 miles from the marker, now below 2,000 to establish and localize a clear LS runway 16 approach at Westchester. Piedmont 3475 near departure, radar contact, climb and maintain 8,000.
We need to be right 100% of the time, because more than likely, if I make a mistake, that airplane's going to come in close proximity to another airplane. If the pilot doesn't hear me, doesn't listen to me, takes the wrong instruction, takes a wrong turn, takes somebody else's turn, somebody else's altitude, more than likely there's going to be somebody else in that area.
Avianca 052, Heavy New York, good evening, climb maintain 3,000.
Climb and maintain 3,000, and we're running out of fuel.
Okay, fly heading is 080.
In January 1990, Avianca Flight 052 from Columbia was approaching Kennedy Airport. A 4.5-hour flight had turned into 6 hours because of bad weather and congestion in the New York area. The controllers were dealing with dozens of flights, all anxious to land. The Avianca plane was running out of fuel, but the TRACON controllers weren't aware that the situation was critical.
The controller that was working that day, I can hear his voice in my head listening to that tape. He said to Avianca, I'm going to take you about 15 miles north. Is that okay with you and your fuel?
And Avianca 052 Heavy, I'm going to bring you about 15 miles northeast and then turn you back home for the approach. Is that fine with you and your fuel?
I guess so, thank you very much.
The plane had missed one approach because of severe winds. It was sent on a loop around the airport to try another landing.
When he was turned back up for resequence, he was put towards the back of the line and complained about fuel. He didn't complain in the form of an emergency. Had he done so, the seas would have parted and he would have been brought right in.
Avianca 52, climb maintain 3,000.
Negative, sir. We're just running out of fuel. We're good. Okay, 3,000, that'll be good.
Okay, turn left heading 310, sir.
310, Avianca 052.
You ever been in a car? Well, we'll make the next gas station, it'll be okay. Come on now, give it a shot. You pass one, should we have... It was that kind of mentality, and yet in a car, you're gonna pull over to the side of the road, and the airplane didn't have the same options.
Avianca 052, we just lost 2 engines, and we need the priority, please.
Avianca 052, turn left heading 250, intercept the localizer.
Roger.
They ran out of fuel. They literally ran out of fuel. The engines went silent, and they just coasted it into a hillside about 15 miles from here.
Avianca 052, you have enough fuel to make it to the airport? Avianca 052, radar contact lost.
Just hold on right now if they're accessible. Let's get some of the people off the wing up top and get anybody here that's accessible. Wait, if they're accessible, take them on the other side. Ronnie's got a triage on the other side for anybody that's down right here.
The Avianca 707 crashed in Cove Neck, Long Island, just 6 minutes from safety. 73 people, including the flight crew, died. 85 survived. According to the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation, the crew should have told the controllers that they were in a fuel emergency. This form of words immediately triggers emergency landing procedures.
We have bad weather, we'll get as many as 10 aircraft come in with minimum fuel or some kind of fuel problem. I'd say at least from the whole room, at least one a day. Some aircraft has some problem that's considered an emergency and has to make an emergency landing or take some kind of emergency action. At least one a day. You don't consciously think when you're working that these are airplanes with people on them. It's kind of just, you got to keep this target away from this target, and it's you talking to this pilot and this pilot, and just, you're living by the rules. But when you have a loss of separation, and you get up and you walk away and you sit down, that's when you start thinking about what just happened. What was the potential for what just happened? And when you go to sleep at night, you're thinking about, man, what just happened? That could have been this, or it could have been that. And when you wake up in the morning, and when it takes a little while to get over. Asiana 222 Heavy, maintain speed 190 knots to levy. Please contact Kennedy Tower 190.1.
Tryon Hernandez works on the Newark sector of New York's TRACON.
Around a year ago in the TRACON, I was working the final position in Newark. It was foggy, very windy, and I accepted a high number of arrivals. I took about, if I remember correctly, I had about 12 to 13 aircraft that were under my control. I lost track of an aircraft under my control for about 30 seconds, and it strayed outside of my airspace, and it came close to another aircraft under another controller's airspace. It was about a mile, about a half a mile, and I believe 400 feet, which seems like a lot, but in air traffic it's really not that much. It affected me greatly because it was really my first operational error after 6 years. My supervisor got me relieved, and I took some time off, probably about 2 or 3 weeks. I don't recall at the time, but I needed some time away from the job. Knowing that you were doing something that was not safe, the fact that you got the airplanes close together, that means that you put the safety of the flying public in question. I spend about at least a half an hour to an hour a day just sitting in front of the fish tank, and that takes my mind completely out of the stress, whatever stress I may have coming from work. It's been great therapy. Ever since I did it, I've been able to handle the stress much better.
Falcon 70 Kilo Sierra, they said to maintain 4,000.
Tryon is still working in the busiest sector of the busiest airspace in the world.
Probably everyone in this room has had a loss of separation at one point or another, and it's definitely something that you think about. Asiana 222 Heavy, maintain speed. And you have to be able to deal with that and still maintain the confidence to get past a bad session, get up and come in and do it again the next day.
November 43 to Quebec Sierra, 210.
I don't think of people when I'm working the radars. I try to look at it as a video game. It's kind of like a way of not having to deal with the reality and the seriousness of the job. Now, don't get me wrong, we all take it very seriously. But in order for you to be able to deal with it in a everyday situation, you have to take your mind off of it.
Finger 400 Alpha Charlie.
And for me, I approach it as a video game. A very serious video game, but a video game nonetheless.
Finger 400 Alpha Charlie, New York approach, you said to maintain 3,000. Turn right heading 050. Falcon 70 Kilo Sierra, they said to maintain 4,000.
Around the world, air traffic is expected to double again over the next 15 years. The airlines want to put more planes into the sky, and aviation authorities are trying to work out the best way to achieve this.
No matter what you do with the airspace, ultimately, there's a piece of concrete that the plane's got to land on, and there's so much room between each airplane. So, you know, there is a finite amount to this, I believe. It's not an unlimited volume, and we're just trying to find the top. There's got to be so many airplanes that can land. If you want to reduce separation between aircraft, you've minimized safety standard that's built in. You know, this, if you do one thing, something else has to suffer. There's no, okay, let's just do this. Oh, look, we've increased capacity and haven't affected anything else. It doesn't work like that here.
The air traffic controller is expected to bring order to the chaos in the skies, the human buffer between the competing interests of commerce and safety. But as the margins for error are reduced, the pressures can only increase. It's a wonder that anyone wants to do the job at all.
The reward is you held the system together again another day, that no one got hurt, that no one lost their lives, and that airplanes and people got where they wanted to go on time. And that's the satisfaction, just doing the job well, knowing that once again, you were the thread that held the system together. And I think that's everyone's satisfaction, whether you work in towers or centers or approach controls. Knowing that another day went by and that thread didn't break, and that you made that happen.